Hello, everybody. This is Michael Hollands for Film.Music.Media. Today I'm talking to none other than Mr. David Newman, one of the industry's finest composers and conductors. Over the past decades, Mr. Newman has established himself as one of the most distinctive composers working, scoring more than 100 motion pictures. For instance, The War of the Roses, Broke Down Palace, Hoffa, Ice Age, The Affair of the Necklace, Serenity, the Oscar-nominated Anastasia, Tarzan, and many more up to his most recent project, Five Flights Up, starring Morgan Freeman. Thank you for joining me today, David.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. David, when looking at your family and musical background, it certainly comes as no surprise at all that you became a composer as well. When did you decide that you wanted to study music and to become a film composer?
Well, in my family, we were all made to study. We all started with violin at a very early age, and we were classically trained. So I did violin and piano, and in college, what we call university, I studied violin and piano and conducting, but I never really studied composition. I worked as a professional violinist in my 20s. Maybe up to age 28, 29, a little bit beyond that, doing film and television work. I actually played on the movie E.T. and played on several other John Williams films, and Lalo Schifrin and Jerry Goldsmith. And, I had a lot of experience. I played on a lot of movies, and I just sort of gradually came to the conclusion that I wanted to write film music. Since I was very well trained in music, my father had us we had a more European training. We did theory and counterpoint and all the disciplines when we were pretty young, 12 or 13, a little more what would go on in Europe, or at least in Europe in the 19th century. And so I knew how to write things, and I just had no experience composing. So it took me about 3 or 4 years to figure it out. It didn't really come very naturally to me. I had studied orchestration, but orchestration's very difficult to learn. It's more of a thing that you experience, and you make mistakes, and you fix them, and then you start to understand how it works. Even me that had played in tons of orchestras all my life, from being a young person, orchestration was still difficult for me to learn. And then, gradually I started to get a little bit of work, and then more work, and it just kind of developed from there. But really my training was all kind of normal classical music, orchestral, private lessons every week, university, playing in all these young youth orchestras, and then professionally freelancing in Los Angeles. So that's kind of my trajectory. The conducting I was always really interested in. I always studied privately, even through my 20s. But then when the film composing started, that kind of fell off. I mean, I was doing stuff here and there, but not nearly as much as I've been doing in the last 5 or 6 years with all the live movie stuff that's going on in the world now. So I've been doing a lot more lately, last 5 years or so.
Okay. When you started out in 1987, I believe it was, you
Mm-hmm.
had your first collaboration with Danny DeVito
Yeah,
on
throw
From.
mama from the train. Yeah,
Right, exactly.
yeah,
And I think you did four more movies with him,
yeah,
including The War of the Roses.
yeah.
How did you, in general, approach the scores with Danny, and what type of director is Danny?
Um, well, he evolved. I mean, but I think he always had a really clear vision of what he wanted to do in his movies. He loves mixing comedy with sort of the dark part of humanity, but making it kind of funny. But there's a lot of pathos in it. It's very was always very good. His movies, the richness of the way that they looked and the subject matter always was good for music because everything was a little hyped up in the movies. The way things are shot, the way it looks, the stories, all that is really allows for you to push the music a little more than you normally could in a, that era reality kind of film. So it always just was very simpatico for me, all through all the stuff that we did. We're working on doing Matilda now as a live film. Do you know about all the live film stuff that's going on, or where you do the movie with an orchestra live? You mute the music on the yeah. So we're going to book. We're working on Matilda to do that as a live movie because we think that would be an interesting thing to do. And Danny might do some of the voiceover. There's a lot of voiceover narration in that movie, and he'll hopefully on some venues he'll do it live, which we think will be fun too for him to do all that. So I had a great collaboration with him. The last thing I did, I think, was he did, what was that? There was a movie called Duplex, which he took over from, that was kind of the last thing that we did together like that, really. So.
Okay. Well, I like those movies a lot. I mean, especially Throw Mama from the Train and The War of the Roses, which is one of my all-time favorites, dark comedies. And I love the score and especially the opening credits. That's really great.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a perfect kind of subject matter for somebody like for Danny, because it's funny, and then they fight to the death, and they really go to the death, to the end, and there's all this poetry in it, and things aren't what they seem, and you can just do so much. There's so many opportunities with music to do stuff. A lot of times with film score, you have to be really careful that you don't push it beyond what the movie can handle.
Yeah,
I know that seems like an obvious thing for somebody, but it's not, because you start writing music and you want to sort of follow along where the music takes you, because music has its own sort of syntax and it makes its own sense. But you can't do that. You have to adjust it to what the movie can handle and where the movie's going. So it's very hard to learn that, or at least it was for me, especially in a movie that's a movie like that. I mean, I guess you could say it's a dark comedy, War of the Roses, but it doesn't really, I think, define what it really is. It's a little bit different than a dark comedy. It's it just keeps switching off between drama and comedy, or maybe it's just a dark drama that's kind of funny sometimes and allows you to, and a lot of times, so you write music for something dark, but you need to allow the audience to be able to laugh.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you can't push it so far that they can't laugh.
Yeah.
That was particularly true in Throw Mama from the Train, where I wrote a main title that just was too much. It wasn't crazy enough, and it didn't allow the audience to laugh. And so I rewrote it. I learned on that kind of the style, what worked in his movies from Throw Mama from the Train.
Yeah.
The main title. Yeah.
Well, that's always an interesting, point, the psychological effect of film music or of music in general. And when you put it up against the images, what music can do, like you just said, give the audience the license to laugh, or just that's a very difficult thing to do actually. But I think in Throw Mama it worked really well, and especially in The War from the Roses, of the Roses, and really the film itself with Michael Douglas. I think there are some funny scenes in it, and many scenes are really funny, but it's a borderline thing sometimes. It's really sad.
It really is. I mean, he never understands what happened.
Yeah.
And it's so, the last thing when she I mean, not to spoil, but when they're dying, that whole scene when they're dying, he still doesn't understand it.
Yeah,
He goes to his death not understanding what happened to him.
absolutely.
And for her, it's almost a war against men in a way, or the male ethos in society in America, or whatever. How the men just don't listen. It's like it becomes a battle of male female almost in a way, and there is a lot of pathos in it, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work to push that too much. It when you start pushing it, it's less. It has less pathos than it does. It's very tricky. We just found ourselves, Danny and me. It was very simpatico. We were very the original score that Danny liked for Throw Mama from the Train, of all things, was a score I did a couple years before called Critters that Stephen Herrick directed.
Yeah.
And that music had absolutely nothing to do with Throw Mama from the Train. He attempted in, and it was so dark and mean and violent, but he saw something, I think, that was funny in it, because that also was a comedy. But the music was really dense, and I don't know how to describe it. It was like taking a baseball bat and pounding people on the head. I'm not saying the score. I like the score for Critters, but it was a horror movie and it was a different thing. But he seemed to find something in it, a humor in it, at the same time being violent and dark. And I think that's what he needed in his movies.
Yeah.
And I mean, Hoffa was a different, but it's still the same thing. He has a very weird point of view about a visual point of view, and the films are always really rich, and maybe, I don't know, for want of a better word, they're sort of rich and creamy. They're really, really good for music.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's really fun writing music for what he shot. And I think he's at heart a sort of operatic soul. He loves opera. He loves his Italian heritage. And there's a lot of that in it. A lot of Italian opera kind of ish. I don't know, for want of a better word. Things in it,
Well, that's a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
And like you said, his movies, I think, give the composer a tremendous amount of freedom. And especially Hoffa, I love the movie, and of course Jack Nicholson's one of my favorite actors, and the story itself, it worked so well on screen, and of course your score just complemented the images so well. And I think one of the cues, I think it's called Trucker's Salute.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the cues that you wrote that I listened to the most, and they also use it in several trailers. For instance,
for a while. For a while it was licensed a lot for.
Especially LA Confidential. I remember that clearly. I loved the trailer, and when the music just popped in, that was a great moment, actually.
I think I made more money off licensing the trailer music than I did on the movie.
Okay.
So that was a little bit of a different movie, but in a lot of Danny's movie, there's a lot of POV, where point of view, where one character, the camera's on the character that's not talking, and you watch them listening. And the movie Hoffa was about, well, Hoffa's a weird character for an American, because he's a very negative. He's an anti-hero, and he's really not all that heroic a figure in America. I don't know what it's like in Europe, because it's, I'm sure you guys look at it differently. But in America, it's a weird thing to take Hoffa and make him an anti-hero, which is sort of what the movie was about. But when you look at what he did, that he organized all those men, the truckers, which was basically what the story was about, was him organizing under horrible conditions, bringing these workers together so that they could exercise their right to strike for better conditions and all that. but he does it by talking. He's talking. He's always talking in the movie. And so a lot of the score was trying to deal with this incessant talking and then this heroic aspect of Hoffa. But it was complicated because he's not really a hero. He was a bad guy, and he just it was like it's sort of like the mafia thing, you always hear them say they're doing it for their family. Everything I do because they're very family oriented. But you get a sense that that's not really why they're doing it. They're doing it for power and because it's a tradition in that kind of world. So that was a very tricky movie to do. It started off great because I wrote a trailer, so I didn't have to deal very much with temporary music, with temp music.
Yeah.
But it was a very difficult one to do. I think we spent on and off of almost 6 months or a year posting that movie. So anyway,
it's a long time.
Yeah.
David, what other composers, past or present, do you admire the most personally?
I think recently for me, I mean, of course, I think Jerry Goldsmith was hegemonic and John Williams. I think what's interesting about the late 20th century is that you have those two sort of icons looming over everything. I mean, you have Alex North, you have Mancini.
Yeah.
I think the score to Spartacus might be the best score or my favorite score of the 20th century. But in terms of sheer output and influence, I think you'd have to say Goldsmith and Williams. And Goldsmith goes from one end of the spectrum so if you look at Goldsmith as sort of a modernist in a way.
Yeah.
So he's moving towards the populist form that's film music, and John Williams, I think, is really a populist at heart.
Yeah.
But moves a little more into the modernist part of film scoring, and you have the whole sort of spectrum for this. What was it? I mean, John Williams is still going, and Jerry died, I think, in 2004. I think he died.
Yeah, it was 4.
But I mean, that's almost 50 years, and John Williams is still going. So But lately, I've been thinking and listening about a lot about Alfred Newman, about my father, for obvious reasons, because of the nature of his ability to conduct and perform his music and the ability to administrate, which is a whole different thing. John Williams and Goldsmith grew up in the studio system, but not, most of their life was in the freelance world, which started in 1959, 60 when the studios broke up.
Yeah.
Almost all of Alfred Newman's career, as well as, of course, Steiner and Korngold and the rest of them, completely different thing. So the ones that ran studios, they were administrators. And I think when you think of, say, the great music directors, say in America, Zell and Ormandy and Stokowski or in Europe, Karajan or Furtwängler or Mengelberg and the Concertgebouw, a lot of their job is administrating, is picking the players, training the players, stuff that doesn't really happen the same way now. They finally got smart, the musicians, and unionized so they couldn't be abused, because a lot of these guys were very abusive. But I'm fascinated now by Alfred Newman's output, particularly his score for, of all things, the movie All About Eve, the 1950 movie. It's over 2 hours, the movie, and it has maybe 30 minutes of music.
Yeah.
But I think it's an extraordinary score, and the score from Captain from Castile, which has a ton of music.
Yeah.
Especially the beginning. There are cues in it that I think are just absolutely transcendental. And I think part of the reason they're so good is the playing, the way the orchestra plays. So it's almost impossible to separate the playing from the music, and therefore you have to sort of add in the administration. He's picking everything. He has complete authority. He's picking all the players, the orchestrators, other composers to do all the other films that they're doing, et cetera, et cetera. It's a remarkable achievement. It's a different kind of career in life than Goldsmith or John Williams, but it's interesting, and it's where everything comes from. If you figure real film music started in 1933 with Steiner doing King Kong.
Yeah.
That to me, that is based. That's kind of where it really started, where modern film scores started. Original music for a film and not using canned music, and so 33 to about 59, and then 1960. This when Mancini comes in and Alex North. The lines are sort of blurred.
Yeah.
From the 50s into the 60s, and then kind of into the modern era.
Yeah.
And now we're in a little bit different era where John Williams is sort of the kind of last holdout in a way of that era. That we're in a little bit of a different, technology's made it a lot different what a film score is now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's whole nother conversation.
Yeah, absolutely true. But speaking of that, nowadays, not only the music has changed, but also the schedules are more compressed, I think, than they used to be. Also due to the faster editing process. How do you handle the pressure of that when a director says, "Okay, we got the film, it's edited, but where's the music?" And how do you handle that? And how many minutes of music a day do you actually have to write?
I mean, it depends. It's not all that different. Even though it's much easier to edit, they just keep editing. Everyone just fills up all the time.
Yeah.
And it's not true. Some movies in the 30s and 40s had to be written in days, and would be written by multiple people. That's why there was a big music department. Say at Fox, they'd have 8 or 9 composers on staff, and they'd help each other out. If I think this has always been the way it is. I think what's changed with technology is the ability of people that are more on the producer's side of music to actually write film scores. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I think it's kind of the same. Some movies you can go on forever. If you figure that up to 59, you had an orchestra on call all the time.
Yeah.
It was no problem to to redo a cue. So there was, if you figure that your orchestra was like your digital audio workstation, your what we call a DAW, which is what we all use now to do mock-ups. Mm-hmm. Now that's what you use. You use a computer to show whoever's in charge what the music's going to be. In that day, you just recorded it, and then if something needed to be changed, you just recorded it again. It didn't cost any more money. When the studio system went away, it did, for a while, cost more money, and you would go and redo. The only way to redo something, you'd hear a cue and they wouldn't like it, and you'd have to go in and redo it.
Yeah.
But once the technology came, everything you mock up everything on a digital audio workstation with the samples, and it's certainly good enough that the powers that be can tell what it's going to be. And so that's kind of what's different. But it's not all that different. What's different is the kind of person that's writing film music now. Mm-hmm. You have a whole section that are more producer type. They're not as trained in what historically the people that wrote film music were trained in. Mm-hmm. So it's no better or worse. It's just different. Also, what is different is the sound effect component of movies. Well, obviously that's different. And obviously that affects what kind of music you can write and how it's going to be heard and how subtle you can be and what you can or can't do. That's been drastically affected by technology.
Yeah.
It's a big fight for there's only so much sound you can put out. And so if everyone's just, pedal, as we call here, pedal to the metal is, going as hard and fast as they can, something has to give. So that's an issue now, is how to strategize, what kind of, and you don't ever know what the sounds are going to be till it's kind of done. They're working on the sound effects in the dub. You don't really hear the sound effects until they actually start dubbing the film. And when they're dubbing the film, the music has generally been done and recorded.
Yeah.
So that's very tricky.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, I think the point you just made is a very good one, but I think many aspects have changed, and I hear quite a few people complaining, if I can call it that, about the decline of the quality of movies. Many people perceive that the studio policy and filmmaking in general have changed to a degree that it is more important to market and to sell something as opposed to making a good movie.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think movies, as they get more and more expensive, it's natural, and they're owned by corporations. It's just a natural evolution of what it is. They figured out for the time being how to pick the right movie that will sell all over the world. So to sell a movie everywhere in the world, it has to be a certain kind of movie. That's why the comic book movies work so well. They're like graphic novels.
Yeah.
That even if you don't understand the language, you can tell what the story is. And then you have really exciting special effects and, really spectacular stories. I mean, there's an analog like, I'm a big opera person. In fact, I love German opera. But when you think of Baroque opera, which is 1600, say, to 1750, that's 150 years, which basically was in Italy, in Venice and in Florence, a little bit in Rome, but particularly in Venice, where composers from all over Europe would come and have a contract and do operas. And that was the big spectacular event. So say that those were like the movies of the day. They got more and more and more spectacular. More and more of it was about special effects and vocal pyrotechnics, and it just got crazier and crazier and crazier as the years went on. And I think that's sort of a natural evolution. And the operas got, you don't remember any Baroque operas. I mean, Monteverdi maybe in the beginning, in 1600 and 1650, there's some of those that are still in that repertoire, but there's hundreds or thousands of them that no one's ever going to ever hear again. I mean, there's Handel, there's a few of them. But it's just, it was kind of just, you'd write an opera and it would last for a couple of weeks and it'd never be heard of again.
Yeah.
And then, and then it got reformed and Mozart came and German opera became a little more hegemonic, and then it affected Italian, and all that, and it cycled around. That seems very much like what's going on with movies. You give the people what they want. You make the most money you want. It really doesn't matter if the movie's any good or not. That's really, that is only to lure artists to try to make a movie. A corporation can't make a movie themselves. They have to hire people to make it. And the people that want to make movies view themselves as artists.
Yeah.
And they kill themselves and want to do a good job. Everyone that does it. But they're not, the corporation really isn't interested in the artistry. They're just interested in the money.
Yeah.
And what they can, and the ancillary stuff, if it's Disney, the rides that you can make, the stuff that you can sell. That's just, obviously it's not good for the art of it. It's just common sense that it's not gonna be as good art if that's the goal. Yeah. I don't know where it's going to go. I think if it didn't cost so much money, it would be different, but it just does. They figured that it makes more sense to make just a few movies that cost $200-400 million that they are sure that they can sell than to make 20 movies that cost between $50 and $80 million, which is what they used to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it is what it is. There's still good movies being made.
Yes.
It's just a lot different than it was for everyone. And of course there's television being made, but that's a different That's a whole different model. And it's not, there's not the history of music and TV that there is in film. So still film is the main thing that you'd want to do as a composer.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Well, I couldn't agree more actually. It is the blockbuster system is so huge nowadays, and then a movie's costing 200 million, 300
Yeah.
million, and it's like a safe bet, doing a Marvel movie or doing 4 or 5 Marvel movies, and they sell many tickets, and maybe the studios are just afraid of taking a chance and investing in something that is more, let's say, original, or something that they would have to start from scratch, a new screenplay, totally new idea. It's a very difficult situation, and I think.
Well, and every time, it's not that they don't try to do that, because once in a while they do, but most of them fail. So every time it fails, it's that much harder to start a new, even if they want to start a new tent pole, that call them tent poles. If it fails, it's, you just go back to the tried and true and just keep doing whatever worked, just keep doing it over and over and over again. It's just natural. It's the corporate mentality. And the more expensive the movies are, the only organizations that can make them are corporations.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave, how would you personally describe the ideal director-composer relationship?
Oh, I think it's what we all went for, like John Williams has with Spielberg, or Alan Silvestri has with Zemeckis, or what I had with DeVito, or it's that relationship. That's the highest. That's the best situation. There's already a built-in trust. There's already a shorthand. It's much harder to do that now. Mainly because there's so many one-offs. So, that was the ideal. Obviously John Williams is still doing that, and Alan's doing that, and and there are other ones too. I'm not thinking, but there used to be a lot more of that than there is now. Those are old relationships that started, in the 70s, 80s. So, and those guys are still working.
Yeah, very true. You did your last film, Five Flights Up, in 2014. The score was released a little bit later. And what are your thoughts on this project? You did it with Richard Longcrane, right?
Yeah, it was great. It was a small movie, but I really liked it. It was a very original, unusual movie. It was a lot of fun to work on. There wasn't a whole lot of music, wasn't a huge budget, but it was really intellectually and viscerally interesting to do. I love them. I love Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, me too.
And it's a gentle little movie. So I didn't, no one thought it was going to be a big blockbuster, but I loved working on it. And they were great. All the people were wonderful to work with. So.
Okay.
And I spent most of this year conducting, and I'm going to do something early next year. I haven't signed it yet, so I can't say what it is. But
no problem.
I've been, again, the conducting thing's kind of been, and then the live movie thing, the Matilda thing that we're doing, has become very interesting to me. And it's not a horrible business either. So it's been interesting. I'm glad I have that ability, that I spent all that time conducting, and I've been able to conduct really, really terrific orchestras. We have some great orchestras here in America, and I was in Schleswig-Holstein 2 years ago, and I'm going to go again this year. I loved that. That was great, and I'm going to be in Berlin this year, I think, too, in June. Doing something I can't remember, maybe a Disney thing or something. I'm not sure, but it's with it's not the Berlin Philharmonic, obviously. What's the other orchestra? Is there a radio orchestra in Berlin? Where are you based?
I'm based in southern Germany, in Hesse, actually. That's let's say 50 miles from Frankfurt.
Yeah. So I've been to Hamburg. I have some good friends in Hamburg, and I've been to Berlin several times.
Hmm.
I love Berlin. It's great. I did 2 film scores in Berlin. I
Great.
did Animals United and the Tarzan for the
Yeah.
Constantine film. I loved, Chris and I loved, my wife and I, we loved being there.
Yeah. Well, those scores. Yeah, Animals United. I really like the score, and
Yeah.
Tarzan. Tarzan was one of my favorite scores of the last 2 or 3 years. That was a fantastic score.
Thank you very much. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed the whole. I love the studio, the engineer, the people, and they become quite good friends. So I'll hopefully get to see them when we're back in Schleswig, because Hamburg, I think it's only like a half hour away where we ended up. In Schleswig-Holstein's the state, right? It's a state, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm not. We were in Neumünster, I think, is where we ended up. way north.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm saying that properly, but
Yeah, no, that's okay. Well, Schleswig-Holstein, the concert is coming up in July
yeah,
2016, I believe.
yeah, we're doing ET.
Yeah, yeah, oh
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
love that.
yeah.
And well, I checked that a couple of hours ago on your homepage. It's a Monday and a Tuesday, I believe, and I hope I can, clear my work schedule to.
Please, yeah. Let me know if you come. I'd love to meet in person. That would be great.
Yeah, me too, me too.
Okay.
Yeah, well, speaking,
Okay.
it would have been great. Well, I was at a Hollywood in Vienna this year, and when I did the James Newton Howard,
Yeah, with
and
Keith. Yeah. How was that? How did that go?
oh, it was fantastic. Actually, it was such a fantastic, brilliant concert.
Yeah.
Music selection was great. I did a full report on Hollywood in Vienna. Maybe I could send it over, or maybe
Yeah.
you would want to read it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I did 3 of those.
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I've seen them all on
Yeah.
television, but unfortunately at that time I was never able to fly to Vienna. And this year when I got my tickets, you were not there, unfortunately. And well, everything at the end happened so fast. I didn't even get to meet Keith.
Mhm.
Didn't really see him, but I met several other people, including, of course, Sandra Tomek
Yeah.
and Michael Balgabi and James Newton Howard. Of course, that was one of the favorite moments of my young life. Actually,
Oh, great.
well, I love James' music, and that was an actual highlight. And the event
Great.
is great, and everything worked out just beautifully.
Yeah.
I think so.
Great. Great. All right.
Yeah, Dave, I think we're a little bit over time actually, and let me just thank you again for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you were very busy at the time. It was great talking to you. I really enjoyed it. It was an honor for me. I was introduced to your music at the age of 8 or 9, I believe.
Oh God.
And yeah, it was over 20 years ago. Yeah, well, I started out, well, I think the Mighty Ducks and the War of the Roses and all that stuff. The Nutty Professor, yeah, Tommy Boy,
Yeah.
and yeah, and that was the start, and I've been hooked ever since. And thank you so much. I would love to meet in person. Maybe we can
Well,
work something out. I'm positive.
absolutely. Yeah. I'm gonna be in Berlin, and then I don't think that's on my website yet, but I'll put it when it gets settled up, and definitely in Schleswig-Holstein. Let me know if you come. And
Yeah.
thanks for talking about and loving movie music. We all really appreciate all you guys out there listening and loving it like we do.
Yeah, like I
Appreciate
said
it.
at the beginning, it's my life, and I wouldn't trade it for anything else. So that's a great passion.
All right.
David, thank you very much, and
Nice.
up front, I wish you just the best. And
You as well.
thank
Thank
you,
you.
Dave. Bye, Dave.
Bye-bye.